Current high school principal, special education director at Delton Kellogg Schools.
Welcome everybody. I'm Lucas. You want to shake my hand? I know it's different times now.
Welcome.
We'll get everybody. My wife's going to be coming in with a water here in a minute. So
Terrific. We probably should have provided drinks tonight.
Yeah.
Or charged for them. We could have paid 50 cents a bottle. Went to Costco, got 50 cents a bottle, and made $10 tonight. I appreciate everybody sticking around. I see a big, huge stack of feedback papers up there. That's terrific. I've said all along, I've even put on now uncensored, that this is a community decision, and it's important that the board hears from everybody. Trying to stay positive. I don't need the negatives. We can get that anywhere today on social media. So we have another candidate to interview here, and feel free to complete another feedback form, please. Now we're going to proceed to our interview of Mr. Lucas Trierweiler, correct?
Trierweiler.
Trierweiler. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate it. We've reviewed your resume, and that's why you're here. We like what we saw, and now we're on to round number 1 of interviews. The board will be asking questions today in a round-robin fashion. There's no time limit. Take your time, answer your questions as you want. So tell us how your experiences and qualifications have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Gobles Public Schools.
All right. I have well, once again, thank you for being here. My wife is also joining us. She'll be coming in here in a minute. But once again, thank you for having me. I've got a bunch of different experiences in education. I actually kind of backdoored into education. When I originally was in the military, when I was a medic in the military, when I came out of the military, I was going to go to med school. I was going to continue with my medical degree, and then halfway through my bachelor's, I changed my mind, went into education, and I was going to become a general ed special education teacher. I got misplaced at William Norrick's special ed classroom, and it was too late to switch me. I fell in love with special ed. So then I went directly, got my master's so I could become a special ed teacher at the Gobles County Juvenile Home. After being there a few years, I got an administrative job at Kent ISD, Grand Rapids Public Schools, for a center-based school with emotional impairments. Hardest job I'll ever have, and the most fulfilling job I'll ever have. Tough kids, learned a lot. Went from there to Delton, which was very close to home, so it was kind of a no-brainer move. And there I was the director of special education. I've been the director of curriculum. Just a normal small district. We have a small admin team, and I've held every central office position known. I've also been a lifelong learner, so I've got several master's degrees to continue my lifelong learning to learn. Thank you. As well as train of thought here. As well as I went to 2 different superintendent academies, one through Mesa and one through Michigan Leadership Institute. My district sent me to those so I could learn some behind the scenes things and stuff like that. And ultimately, every leadership position I've held, I've learned how to work with people. My motto is stay positive, build relationships. And I think as long as you do that, you're always doing well by your stakeholders, by those that you're leading, and all your peers. You have to collaborate. I don't know everything. I don't even act like I know everything. But I guarantee there's an expert in the room who will know something. And if you collaborate with those individuals and you use that moral compass of what's in the best interest of the students, you'll always do the right thing. So that is kind of my track that has prepared me for the superintendency. I stay positive, I build relationships, and I look out for people.
Great, appreciate that. Next we'll be moving on to Vice President DeYoung with a question.
What are the important issues in creating a good board-superintendent relationship? How will you facilitate such a relationship? And how will you communicate with this board?
Well, I'm going to answer the first question with the third question. I think the best way to have that board relationship is communication. I think there has to be full transparency. I think we have to work in a partnership. I think we have to understand our roles and how we will go about managing the district. Obviously, you all are elected officials, and I would be a hired position. And the board and the superintendent have to work along with other stakeholders to develop a mission and a vision. And you have to work towards that vision. We just can't do things on the fly. And as long as you're transparent, everybody understands, in my opinion, everybody on the board is an equal partner. So I think everybody should be getting the same information. Everyone should have the equal input. And because if we don't, then there's a tilt of power. Obviously, each one of you have been elected in for the reasons that the stakeholders elected you in. So I think it's important that everybody shares that commitment, everybody shares the responsibility, and everybody shares that communication. I think the best way to foster that is to, one, build that relationship with each other, enjoy each other. I think you have to be genuine, you have to be authentic, and as long as we have that goal of doing what's in the best interest of the school and students, we'll always be okay. To me, this is the head of the table. The school is the community, it's one big family. And you have to keep that family in good graces with each other. As long as you have that family atmosphere, you trust each other, you enjoy each other, you shouldn't have any problems. Because that's really what the school is. Without a school, the community's not there. And it's really important to have that family aspect.
Thank you. Next we move over to Secretary Martin with a question.
This one is pertaining to the budget. Tell us what budget development process you use or would use, and how the process works to gain broad support for the final result.
Well, I think you have to start with a zero-based budget. And you have to, once again, have long and short-term goals. If you don't have goals and you're not looking ahead, then it's difficult to balance that budget and to make your expenditures up front. Obviously, you guys have a very healthy fund balance right now, so congratulations. I see it's well over 20%. And I think that's important because you never know when the rainy day is going to hit, and a school that can't manage that is going to struggle. So I think with the board, the superintendent, and the business manager have to have really good partnerships. And you have to understand what those goals are. What is your vision? What are your priorities? And you have to look ahead. Are we going to need a new roof for the elementary in the next 3 years? If so, we got to start building towards that. I'll use my current district as an example of kind of what not to do. We have recently passed a bond and we put in a turf football field. Beautiful. We know we're going to have to replace it in 10 to 12 years, and it's going to be $450,000. We should probably be putting $30,000 a year away to prepare for that. That would be a long-term goal. Currently, we're not. Hopefully, we pass another bond and we can replace that turf in 10 years, but that's wishing and hoping isn't a good way to do it. So you have to plan ahead, and that's the big part of the budget planning process.
Thank you. We'll move over to Treasurer Dalton Akers with a question.
Tell us how you maintain visibility and accessibility for staff, parents, and community groups.
You have to be visible. You have to go.
Can you move the microphone closer to me?
Oh, to me?
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Test, test.
There you
They're on.
go.
Lights on.
So, you have to be visible. There's some people think, you know, if you're, well, one, I'm a high school principal. I'm at 5 events a night just for the high school. You have to be known. If you're visible, I should be able to walk through the village market and I should be stopped by 4 people. And hopefully, hey, you're doing great stuff, you're doing great things. You gotta be a part of that. You gotta go to the cornhole tournament for the grad badge. You know, coming up here in a week or so, you gotta be there. I'd probably win it, but I'm just saying. But those are the things you have to go to. You want the community to know who you are. Even if you don't live in the community, you gotta be a part of the community because you are. You're an essential part. Be active at the events. Spread the wealth. If there's 3 events in the same night, elementary, middle, and high school, you know, 15, 20 minutes each one. Make sure you're there. Be approachable. And, you know, you shop in the district. You know, you order Freddy's goodies, and you do whatever you got to do to be a part of the community, because if they don't know who you are, what is the position? Yeah, I mean, every administrative position within a small district should be the face of the district. I would expect that by modeling that and expressing that, all the administrators would be the same. I imagine as board members, you guys are going to things that you may not necessarily want to, but it's what you do. And you know how you do it? You do it for the kids. I tell my teachers all the time, there could be 1,000 people in the stands at a basketball game. And if you're a teacher there, they see Mr. Smith up in the corner. And you just gain that much more respect from that kid. And now they're gonna value you and your education in your class a whole lot more. So that's what you gotta do to be visible. Because it's probably the most important thing for a superintendent and for any administrator is to be visible, to be approachable.
Thank you. Next, let's move on to Trustee Phillips with a question.
Do you have any experience with alternate funding sources?
A little bit. When we look at we have a large, we have a lot of lakes in Delton. So our 18% non-homestead is actually pretty significant for us. And it's actually very nice because a lot of them live in Chicago and they're not voting. So it passes pretty well. And we've passed a lot of bonds. Since I've been at Delton, we are finishing basically we're in the middle of our third bond. So part of that is getting the word out. We're obviously always writing grants. We have a lot of money that's coming in now. We got like 31N money and obviously the COVID money that will probably be going away. But when you get those alternate sources, I think you have to be careful with them. Because sometimes you will plan on them to, wow, we can increase salaries by 40%. Well, is it something that's sustainable? So I think going back to the budget question is, as you budget things, is it sustainable? I think if you can get long-term funding sources, that's great. Whether it's a sinking fund, and I'm not even sure if you have a sinking fund. I wasn't able to see it. Do you have a sinking fund? So once again, that's a secondary budget item in my opinion that takes a whole different set of planning. Because obviously there's things you can and can't use that for, and you can use that to supplement. So I think you have to be strategic when you do use those alternate sources because they're not guaranteed to be there necessarily all the time.
Thank you. Mr. Berza with a question.
How do you take the pulse of your present community from students, teachers, staff, and your community?
Hopefully they're talking to me when I'm being visible. But you have, currently in my district, I send out surveys all the time to the kids and to the teachers and staff. I let them evaluate. And you do it anonymously so that they don't fear retribution or anything like that. As far as the community, presently I do monthly coffee conversations. So I think on the second Monday of the month, from 8:30 to 9:30, I put out coffee, tea, and donuts and stuff, and community members come in, they sit with me for an hour, and they get to talk about whatever they want to talk about. And you get that through them. You hear what's going on in the street. I'm part of Rotary. Rotary is a huge part of our school. You get information from them. You talk to the local churches. You talk to the local businesses. You talk to past graduates, and you talk to the universities, and you find out what is going on. Because there's the perception, and then there's reality as well. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, I think perception has always looked a little darker than what it really is. And that's unfortunate because we got a lot of teachers and a lot of staff members that are busting their butt every day, working hard, and people aren't appreciating it and they're not valuing it. So I think the more you can get that word out to help change that perception, I think that helps. But once again, you just got to be visible, you got to ask, you got to be approachable so people can come to you. But sending out those surveys to the community, you don't really get good feedback usually. I mean, it might be different here because this is a great turnout for a superintendent. But I mean, if you get 50% of your surveys back, that's usually huge. And it's usually, unfortunately, usually your outliers. Everybody who loves the school or everybody who hates the school. And you really need that whole bell curve to get the full reality of it. But you have to be out there and you have to ask.
Thank you. How would you support building administrators and also be supportive of teachers?
Well, first with building administrators, don't micromanage them. They've been hired to do a job, and they should be competent to do that job. I need to be their biggest cheerleader. I need to be their biggest supporter, and I need to make sure that I'm a resource for them. If they need help with something, hopefully I'm the person that can investigate it and find a solution or find a route for professional learning and establish that culture where they feel empowered to do their job. And education's a system that focuses on growth. We're never going to be perfect. You can always get better. And if you embody that and you model that and allow people to grow and allow them to fail, because we do fail along the way, but like most people know, a lot of times you learn more from your failures than you do from your successes. But support them that way, then they feel the freedom to be empowered and to do their job well. If I do that with my administrators, I'm hoping they also do that with their teachers. And as a superintendent, my teachers are just as important, if not more important to me than my administrators, but I'm not going to micromanage my administrator with the teacher. I'm kind of, I always call it a chain of command, but it's really not a chain of command. If a parent calls me and says, I'm going to put myself in the superintendent chair, Mrs. Smith's not doing a good job teaching English 11. I'm not going to go talk to Mrs. Smith. I'm going to talk to my administrator first. Say, hey, why don't you, I got a call, why don't you talk to Ms. Smith, get her side of the story? Because we need to hear from the teacher first. And hopefully, the teacher can just call the parent and be like, you know what, big misunderstanding. Johnny actually had 2 days to do this, whatever it is. It's usually blown out of proportion. If the administrator and the teacher can't handle it and it works its way up to me, then I can step in and I can do what I need to do. But you have to allow it to be taken care of at that lower level. About the time you undermine somebody or overrule someone when it's not needed, it unempowers that person and they don't feel like you have their back. And you lose that trust. And you got to have that trust out there. You got to make sure that they feel valued. You understand that they're very competent because you've got a great staff working under you, and you got to show them that you support them.
Thank you. Back over, Mr. Dion.
The values of a leader are the foundation for decisions made and greatly influence the direction of the organization. This will also impact what our students are exposed to. In the last few years, districts have encountered unique challenges such as CRT, critical race theory, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and COVID-19. In your capacity as a leader, how have you addressed these with your students, staff, and community?
Can you repeat like the first half of that? I'm not going to repeat the first. It's like the first
The values
15 words.
the values of a leader are the foundation for decisions made and greatly influence the direction of an organization. It'll also impact what students are exposed to. And then getting to how the unique challenges faced by school districts recently would be CRT, DEI, and COVID-19. So in your capacity as a leader, how have you dealt with that?
One, what I value doesn't mean more than what anybody else values. These are always tricky subjects because you have to take the pulse of everything that's going on. What are the community values? What are the school's values? What are the staff values? And they're going to be very wide ranges across the board. And it has to be a team decision. This is where collaboration plays a large role. You have to here in COVID-19, mask or no mask. I mean, it's kind of a simple thing, but that was a very heated subject. And both sides had good arguments both ways. But eventually, there has to be a decision made. And that's where you have to gather all the information, and you have to move forward with the pulse of the community, of the school, and of the staff. Because it's not, what are we gonna do for Miss Smith's PE class? Because it's bigger than that. It's about the whole range of the community. So you have to look at everybody's values, and then a decision has to be made. When you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, social emotional learning would fall under that probably as well, CRT. I think people need to be educated in what some of those things really are. Not saying you're conducting lessons in it, but a lot of people think I'm going to use social emotional learning and diversity, equity, inclusion as, we need to be teaching our kids about this. We need to understand what it is, and we need to look at each individual student, and everybody should be treated with dignity and with respect. What we're told to do in the classroom comes from the state of Michigan. We teach standards. We teach in high school, we got the Michigan Merit Curriculum with our standards and our benchmarks, and that is what we follow. I think, for instance, social emotional learning happens every day in class. That's just building relationships, teaching kids how to get along. Did you punch Jimmy in the face? Yeah, we'll go over and apologize to Jimmy. That way Jimmy feels better and he's emotionally ready to carry on a class. That's social emotional. Our teachers do it every day. They don't even know they're doing it. So until it's told that you have to teach, I don't think schools should be jumping the gun on some of this stuff. I think we need to, okay, when it's time to do it, do it. But when we do it the right way. Because I guarantee Gobles is like any other school district, and especially elementary teachers, we get 15 different initiatives every year. Really, can we just finish something before we move on to something else? If we're getting a new reading curriculum, I like to keep it simple. Let's get rid of the 15 initiatives. If we're going to take on a new initiative this year, what 5 are we getting rid of? And let's do the ones we're doing well. So if you're going to implement diversity, equity, inclusion, you're going to implement whatever you're going to implement, let's take our time, let's implement it the right way, let's do it with quality, and make sure it sticks. Because if you start off the wrong way and everybody gets a bad taste in their mouth, that's going to fail. And that's with anything. And is it in the best interest of our students? Is it going to make a difference in the community? Is it going to help the culture of the school? Those are all the factors you have to plan, and that's a team decision. It's not a one-person decision. Ultimately, it's going to come down to the school board because you guys are passing policies. But that's where, as a superintendent, I can help gather that information. I can have those workshops and those talking sessions with people to see, what does the community feel about this? What's the importance of this? And that's how you move forward.
Thank you. That's a hot button topic.
Got to change my answer?
Ms. Martin, how about a question?
All right. So what vision or plan did you set in your past position, and did you succeed?
I've had a few of them, and absolutely. My shining star is my alternative education. It's called the DK Academy. When I started the high school, we used to have 9 or 10 kids in our alternative. They were kind of doing book, kind of doing some online, and they weren't doing anything. They might have one kid graduate, they'd drop out. And now my alternative education is graduating about 39 students a year. And we might hit 40 this year. I'm hoping. I'd really love to hit that 40 mark. And our high school graduates 60 to 75. And the way I look at my alternative education is, it's not the alternative that we're used to. We don't have a smoke room, we don't have all that. But what it is it's an opportunity where school is a kid's life. And school is here, and they have to develop their life around school. My academy, I take their life and I develop school around their life. every kid in my academy's been slapped in the face by life. They're at risk, they've struggled, and I love these kids. And when you create that environment for them where they feel welcome and loved, they succeed. And you know, our dropout rate is very little. We get half those kids that are graduating are school choice kids because we're doing a good job of that. We're tearing Plainwell, Gull Lake, and Hastings up. They're all coming to us to go to our academy. So that's one of my shining stars. Also, when I started at the high school, I was at the middle school prior to that, and I remember looking at some of our kids who were going to go up and take like some high school classes as 8th graders and 7th graders. And I remember seeing, like, every time I pull up Power School and look at kids' grades in high school, a bunch of kids were failing classes. So my first year up there, I went back and run some numbers, and kids were failing classes at about a 50% rate. I'm like, how is this happening? So we ended up instituting what we called advisory. We changed it since it's now called academic enrichment period. But I basically created our old study hall that they would have during the day, but we put some programming in there. So kids were able to, I always said, no new instruction for as far as the class, but they were able to return to their teachers during the week to get that remedial instruction that they needed. We also ran a freshman academy out of there. We also did scholarships for our seniors. We run an SAT prep for our juniors. Our sophomores, we gave them some soft skills and hard skills, because our kids don't have soft skills anymore. They don't even know how to show up to work on time or anything. So the old soft skills are now the hard skills. So we're incorporating a lot of that. So we're putting, and I hate to always call kids a product, but when we graduate as students, we're putting a better product out there because of a couple of these things that we're doing. Our kids are more prepared for life. At Delton, we're a community that's heavy in the trades. We have about a third of our kids who go to college, that's university and community college. A third go into the trades, and about a third go into the workforce. And I feel like all of our kids are prepared for any of those endeavors that they do. And that's really our job as a school, is to prepare kids for the next level. My new initiative that I'm currently working on is working with parents. And in the last 5 or 6 years, educators have been devalued. As a teacher, it's been a while since I've been a teacher, but you used to walk through the grocery store, oh my God, Mr. Trierweiler shops here? You used to be a rock star. Now you go through the grocery store, like, what's up, Lou? They've lost that value. And teachers aren't paid great. We don't get summers off anymore. We're always working on curriculum, we're doing something. And we've lost that intrinsic value of being valued as a person, as a established, higher esteemed profession. Because they are. We're shaping the young minds and the future leaders of this world. And so I'm working on parents to have that value come back in. And I think as they learn more of what we're doing and how to work with our kids are succeeding a little bit better. I always feel bad for our elementary and middle school teachers because obviously educating our students is so far down on the list right now for schools. We're the health department, we're the food bank, we're the mental health facility, we're daycare. Schools take on so many roles now. And our kids are so damaged, a lot of them are so damaged, where they're scared to go home on Friday, so we've got to deal with that behavior. They go home on the weekend, they come back Monday, Tuesday, it takes us that long to get them back where they're settled and they're ready to learn. And we've got Wednesday, Thursday to teach them something, and then we start all over. So it's tough for teachers. So if we can start educating our parents on how to better support those kids, and we got some great parents, don't get me wrong, but there are some parents that do need some help because educating is different. If you're doing Chicago math compared to regular math, I can teach my kids Chicago math right now. Oh my God, I got to log into a Chromebook to Google Class. Parents, school's different than when parents were here. So we've got to help our parents learn how to play school better so their kids can play school better and succeed.
Thank you. Ms. Dalton Akers, I have a question from you.
So, good segue into the next question. You mentioned that teachers have been devalued. What methods have you used to attract and retain top quality staff?
One, word of mouth. And that's probably the best way to, teachers can go anywhere they want right now. What city do I want to live in? I can go be a teacher there. And I'm probably going to get a $5,000 signing bonus. But money isn't everything. If money was everything for a teacher, there'd be no teachers here. They do it because they love kids. That's why we're in education. So if I can make those teachers feel like family, have them want to come to work, enjoy their colleagues, feel valued by their administrator and by their superintendent, quit pushing NWEA testing down their throat at professional learnings, and do a little bit of team building and have some fun and build some unity within them where it's enjoyable to come to work, then that really helps, because I'm gonna go from a high school teacher standpoint. I've got 4 great periods, but man, it's almost 5th period and I've got those 4 boys and I got this and that and I get pit in my stomach and I just can't wait for it. They need someone to be able to go into the staff lounge or go into their room and cry on their shoulder or talk to them and have that connection. So when that word gets out, those teachers aren't going to leave. The beauty of Gobles is it's very similar to Delton. We don't realize how good our kids really are. I've had several teachers in the last 2 years. They're going to leave and they're going to go to Kalamazoo Public School. I'm going to make $10,000 a year more. Halfway through the year, you got a job open next year. I had no idea how good our kids were. I thought our kids were bad. Our worst kids are better than their middle kids. Because small schools are a community. And if I kick 10 worst kids out of school, guess what? You got a new 10 worst kids. But they realize how good they have it. They love that support system. We also got to get with the universities. We've got to work on that pipeline. We've got to work with our kids here at school, because the best teachers to get in Gobles are Gobles graduates. They know what to expect. They want to be a part of the community. They want to live in the community. They know people. So can we, mentor them to want to be an educator? It's hard to get anybody to want to be an educator right now, but you know what? The intrinsic value you get from helping kids is big, and that's really how you've got to get to retain teachers and keep them. Make them feel valued, make sure they got the supplies they want, and make them feel supported. And don't throw 35 initiatives on them every year where they're chasing their tail. Let them get good at what they're doing, and let's see if we can get back to having reading, writing, and arithmetic be back up at number 1 or 2 on the list, instead of being the mental health facility and the food bank. And don't get me wrong, we got to meet the needs of our kids, but we've got to get education back up there.
Thank you. Ms. Phillips.
Tell us about your involvement in collective bargaining in general, then tell us about the most recent contract issue in your district, your involvement in it, and the resolution.
I've been a part of 2 or 3 of the last negotiations we've had, and had a different union president for all 3 of those. And if you are waiting until you sit down at the table with them to negotiate, you're already behind the 8 ball. That has to be an ongoing conversation. It has to be a relationship built where there's some trust. And you got to be real transparent. We got $350,000 you can play with. What do you want to do with it? We want to increase steps. We want to move our starting salary to $40,000 so we can attract new teachers, because the 30s aren't cutting it anymore, or whatever that may be. You got to go in with some tangible items that can actually happen. Obviously, when you talk about money and salary, we don't have an infinite amount. So we got to be careful of that. But are there other things that we can do? I know some of your guys' contract, if they don't use their sick days, they give them $50, and for everyone that uses $50 down, is that something we can increase by $150? That's a give. Because it costs us $50 to get a sub, and I'm only paying them $50 and not taking a thing, so hey, everybody wins on that. So I think you got to be smart with that. The biggest thing I've had recently with our negotiations is a lot of letters of agreement, because a lot of things came up with COVID. We were doing 3-year contracts at Delton. We kind of got in the habit of that. That worked very well. But we always said that the door was open. So we've had some steps. We had some financial difficulties about 7 years ago. And and our teachers actually had to take a 5% cut, I believe, 8 years ago. So we gradually worked that back in, but we made sure that the door was always open to some of those negotiations. But with COVID, one of the big issues were working conditions. What was our ventilation? Do we need to have air purifiers? So those letters of agreement were things that we could change on the fly, especially with new revenue sources to do that. And part of that was we don't just go buy what we think they need. We sit down and we collaborate with them, be like, you know what do you need? What are your top 4 lists? We got this COVID money that we can use. Here's kind of the broad area we can do it in. How do you want to use it? So it has to be ongoing. And then when it actually gets to the contract language, hopefully it's just fine tuning here and there, taking a word out. Obviously, there's been a lot of language that has been removed from contracts recently for legal reasons and everything, so that's always a contentious point. But I think as long as you have that good relationship and everybody knows that they're doing it for the right reasons, it shouldn't be that difficult of a situation.
Thank you. Mr. Burza.
Rate yourself from strongest to weakest in the following 4 categories. Finance, curriculum, staff and administration, community.
I'm going to say I'm strongest in finance and curriculum because that was what was on the posting that you guys were looking for. So, I'm a numbers guy, but I'm going to put finance at the bottom because I haven't been a business manager and I haven't been a superintendent. I've been involved in it and I've been a part of negotiations, but as far as experience, I'm going to rank that down. However, I'm a numbers guy. I should have been a stockbroker or something because I love numbers. But staff is my number 1. Stay positive, build relationships has always been my motto. And that is our most important commodity in schools. So that is where I've always focused a lot of my attention, is to make sure people feel valued and to make sure that the community knows I'm a part of them and that they can come into the school at any time and be a part of our school and also give us feedback about our school. Curriculum, community was a separate one, sorry. But I'm gonna actually put community with the staff because the staff and the community, I believe, is all one. That's all part of my family, so I'm gonna actually combine those together because I've ranked those tied at 1. As far as curriculum, I've had a lot of work with curriculum, and my motto has always been, let's keep it simple. We went through a large overhaul when I was the curriculum director at Delton. That was right after our financial almost collapse. And we worked with Calhoun ISD and we did the Collaborative Curriculum Network. And we basically went K through 12 and we broke down everything. We had 3 or 4 different reading sets, and we were doing Storytown and we were doing Cafe, Daily 5, and we had all this stuff going on. We said, you know what, let's simplify it. What are you using? What are you not? Let's break down our standards. And we went through, we looked at each standard, we created, we kind of call them power standards, but we said, what are the most important standards? Because we know we don't get through every standard that we're supposed to. It just doesn't happen. Snow days, something happens. So what are the most important ones so we can cover those? And then we started at 12th grade and went backwards. Because this is where we want our kids when they graduate. What does the 11th grade have to do to prepare? We worked our way all the way down. So we looked at our gaps, we looked at our overlaps within the high school and within grade levels in the elementary. We looked at our horizontal alignment to make sure everybody was doing the same thing. Common assessments. We made sure everybody had the same template, but you also want to make sure each individual teacher can make it their own. Because what makes Miss Phillips compared to Mr. DeYoung, a different teacher, is her enthusiasm for letters and his enthusiasm for recess and whatever that may be. So we kept that, but we went through and we finally had something where everybody felt like they knew what they were doing. Because as years go on, initiatives keep building up. We implemented Storytown this year. 2 years later, we threw something else on there. So am I still using this? Am I using this? We're gathering a bunch of data that we don't use, so why are we wasting time gathering that data? In my opinion, if you're going to gather data, use that data. If you're not, don't gather it. It's a waste of everybody's time. And time is precious. So I feel like curriculum, I'm right up there with it. However, when it comes to curriculum has to be a collaborative effort, because I am not an expert in ELA. I'm not an expert in elementary education, but there are experts that can be a part of that, and that's when you bring them in and you have them be a part of that change.
Thank you. Good news, I moved finance up to number 3 since you tied for 1. So we've heard about the DK Academy, things you've done there. What have you done additional to improve the school environment, and do you see this translating into your superintendency?
Yes. I've been working on, we kind of got siloed a little bit at Delta. We have 3 buildings, elementary, middle school, high school. Our middle school is 5th through 8th. And over the past 4.5 years, we very much became siloed. We were almost like 3 different school districts. And that doesn't work for a small community, because we have staff that go between both buildings, and we share the same kids and we share the same parents. So my focus over the last 2 years has really been on team building, building that culture within our high school. Our high school is an awesome family, very supportive. We do a lot of stuff together. We had to cut back on potlucks a little bit during COVID, but still doing all that stuff. We found ways to get together. We found ways to still do team building. So I think that's an important part, and now we're doing that district-wide. Because as other buildings look and say, well, geez, the high school's getting along, but we're all backstabbing down here, they want that too. So we kind of spread that district-wide. So that is one of the things that I have done to try to create that culture. The other thing we've had, and I don't know if you guys had it here, but in Delton, we had some issues with Instagram at the high school. We had an Instagram page that was DK bathroom shoes. And people were taking pictures under the stall, people's shoes. We had a bunch of different things. So obviously we threatened to take away cell phones, and it went away. Then it came back again. And it came back as, it was DK and 4K or something like that. And it started off, there's a sophomore that's pregnant. And we weren't too worried about it. So then it started talking about names, and kids started liking it. And this was over a course of maybe 6 or 7 school days. We're like, all right, we're going to squash this. So got hold of police. They are able to call some police hotline to try to block the page. But called an all-school assembly. Had some parents there. So I'm in the gym with a microphone. I'm like, getting all ready for the kids. Had all the staff lined up across middle court. So we showed our sign of unity. All this, and we pulled this together in about 10 minutes through an email. Staff checked your email. And we were out there. Kids were silent. I said, hey, I'm very disappointed. And I had a little speech, and I actually had it written down. I said, I'm going to read this verbatim because that's how important this conversation is. And I knew I'd get choked up a little bit too. But basically laid it out there and said, this isn't what DK is about. We're better than this. We're a better community. We shouldn't be going around this. Dead silence out of the whole high school. As we walked out, obviously there was, our kids who were pointed out in that. Came up hugging, thanking people, and haven't had an issue since. So the stuff that I've done to build that culture in the high school ahead of time, because you just can't do this, you can't be reactive all the time. You have to have some stuff that's proactive to prepare for that reactive. My staff were ready, my staff were supportive, the kids understood what we were going to do, and they knew that they are better than that, and we haven't had an issue since. So sometimes everything you do behind the scenes builds up to those moments, so that when you have to have action, it can happen. The same thing with safety and security. Same thing when you build relationships. I can build relationships with teachers all the time. At some point, you're going to have to bring a teacher and administrator in, and you're going to have the talk with them. If you've got that relationship with them, they should respect that talk. Hopefully they're not like, I thought we were friends. We are, but I'm also your boss, and we got to fix this. And I think that's kind of the same thing that you can do with that to prepare. And that's all part of that building relationships and staying positive.
Thank you. Mr. DeYoung.
So in regards to student achievement, You've already talked about trimming the fat a little bit on your standards that you focus on in your DK Academy. How else, or you can highlight those even more, how would you raise the standards and expectations of our district?
Well, I already see, I've got it written down here somewhere, the district is not bad. We're better than the state. I'm saying Gobles, but I'm one of you now. We're better than the state. We're really good at the elementary level, and it looks like we fizzle a little bit as we get to high school. So one thing you have to do is you have to raise that bar. I'm gonna go back to another thing I did when I first came up to the high school is we created honors classes. We have 12 AP classes that we offer on a rotating basis, but we just had like normal biology. So I came up and we created honors biology. Well, being a small district and you're only offering 3 sections, we had 1 honors and 2 regular, and some kids were involved. But after a year of that, the staff were like, this is kind of hard because I got some kids that should be honors, but it doesn't fit because band is 6th period and all the little things you have. So I said, no problem. Let's get rid of all of our regular classes. So after they had to create the little bit more rigor of a class, we then took that rigor of a class and made that our standard class. So without them even knowing it, we raised the bar just by doing a little bit of curriculum work. Paid them over the summer to do it. So there's no teachers in here in case we do it here. But that was a way to raise the bar. So that helped increase achievement. Also being in a small community, especially now with a kid can get a job anywhere and they can get $15 an hour, kids aren't putting as much time into studying. So do we have something after school where it's some kind of after school tutoring or an after school success center to give those kids that extra bit they need? I also think that the biggest way to improve achievement is I can't be the keeper of information anymore as a science teacher. When I was teaching, I could stand up there and, oh wow, Mr. Trierweiler knows everything. Well, guess who knows more than me? Google. So we can't be that way anymore. We have to be facilitators. I'm a big proponent of project-based learning. I think if you give a kid a project that is authentic, it relates to them at a local level, and I'm not, because a kid in Gobles is going to be way different than a kid from Bloomingdale about what their interests are. So if it can relate to them at a local level and they can find some interest in it, they do a whole lot different. If I'm writing a poem to give to the teacher, and I'm writing a poem that I have to read in front of the student body, I'm going to get 2 different pieces of work. So if you can have that project base, have it be more authentic learning, they're going to value it more. They're going to put more time into it, and they're going to do a better job of it. So those are ways that you can increase achievement a little bit more. If you just focus on the test, it's not going to work. But if you create a good culture, that's going to basically increase all your hidden curriculum, because that's what school really is. It's hidden. You don't learn a ton in high school. You learn a little bit of math, and you learn how to get along with others. You learn all that hidden curriculum. If they feel valued, they feel welcome, they feel safe at school, they're going to do better and they're going to achieve better.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Trierweiler, we appreciate your interest in the position. And as we wrap up our interview here tonight, we want to hear what drew you to Gobles, our community and our district, to become the superintendent here, and any other closing thoughts you might like to share with us.
Well, the main thing that drew me to Gobles is the barbecue truck on Sunday. Especially when I get shrimp. You just have to go to Allegan to get them. Delton and Gobles are very similar. Obviously, we've been in the SAC together now. Well, that's the Southwest area. We've been in the SAC together now for about 5 years. I go to a lot of the athletic, being a high school principal, we meet with the athletic directors a lot, and obviously, I know Chris Miller in passing, he's an outstanding at that. If anybody else in Delton is like Chris Miller, I'm all about Gobles. So that's a big thing. So kudos to you guys, and kudos to some of the stuff that he does, because he is an awesome person when it comes to athletics. But this is a town, I didn't grow up in Lakeview, I grew up in Truthville, which is even smaller. It's not that's capital of the world. So, we had a bar and an ice cream place. That was about it. So I'm a small town guy, and I love the community atmosphere. I love the small town. I'm not looking to, you know, become the superintendent of the state of Michigan or go to Kalamazoo Public Schools or whatever like that. I like making a difference at a local level. I like being someone who can be at a school everybody knows, and you do a great job, and when you leave a legacy, so that they remember 20 years from now, because of my pictures in the hallways. Remember Mr. Trierweiler, when he was superintendent, he came in and, you know, he did this, he did that, and, you know, he was always visible, and he won the cornhole tournament, and what, you know, whatever it is, you know, that's the beauty of small town. I love the community aspect. I love everybody knowing everybody. I love kids coming in and be like, hey, I see you haven't washed your truck in a couple of days, Mr. Trierweiler, and, you know, because that's what you want. I love knowing every kid in school. I love walking down the hallway, giving a high five, and knowing a little something about that kid, like, hey, how'd you do last night? Hey, did you get that job interview? How's your brother doing? And, you know, that was one of the things I missed last year when every kid had a mask on, because I felt like I didn't know the kids as well, because I wasn't in a class with them. And, you know, and we had more high-fiving. So last year was tough, because everything I love about the school, those relationships with kids and knowing every kid, was a little different last year. Behavior-wise, it was great. Every kid had a muzzle on. We had zero behavior issues. But that's not why we're here. So that's what draws me to a town like Gobles. And to be honest with you, another thing that draws me to Gobles is I love where I live. I got a little 40-acre farm. I do a little sweet corn farming and all that kind of stuff. And I'm not looking to be a superintendent anywhere. I'm looking to be a superintendent that I can drive to in 20 minutes because I'm not really willing to move. So obviously that narrows my search of where I can be a superintendent. And I want to be a superintendent because I feel like I can make more of an impact with kids. It's always been my goal, and I feel like I got a lot to offer a community like Gobles. And can you get TJ's courthouse open back?
Probably not. There's probably more mushrooms in there than anything else.
I used to get them on sale.
Well, we appreciate your interest in this position. As you know, we had interviews Monday night? Tuesday night. I've been here so long this week. So we had them here Tuesday night. We have some tonight. Appreciate it. You are last for the night. And if you're selected as a finalist, we'll let you know and expect your money if that's what happens. So appreciate your time. I encourage the audience, again, I saw everybody writing. I appreciate that. As I said before, even on the uncensored, it's all of us making this decision. The board's going to have the vote in the end, but it's important that we hear from you and your input, because we're all invested in this community and this district. So get those filled out. We appreciate your time. We will take a 10-minute recess and reconvene at 7:50.